Pokédex used to actually matter. It provided easy to access fun facts. It was a tool to help find wild Pokemon. It told you about a Pokemon's type, size, cry, weight, height. But it's even more than that. Recently replaying the Switch re-releases of Fire Red and Leaf Green has proved this to me. Why? Because the Pokédex in these games did something major that feels very counterintuitive in Pokemon. They severely limited the player. Hear me out. Pokemon is a game of options. It easily allows for some of the most customizable parties in any video game ever. You could replay the same game over and over again and still have a team that looks completely different. Different types, moves, stats, etc. This makes Pokemon super replayable and ensures that everyone has a different, yet similar, experience. And one of those major similarities everybody had to share was the makeup of the Pokédex roster. Let's look at the Kanto Pokédex as an example. There are 151 options for you to use in the main story. Sort of. Mew is unobtainable, so let's remove it, and Mewtwo is post-game only. And the starter choices from the 2 you didn't pick, another 2 from the fossil, and 2 more from the Eevee you didn't evolve, and the Hitmon you left at the dojo. So if my math is correct, that's 138 options. A little more contracted. Oh, but we neglected to include version exclusives. Let's just use the Fire Red and Leaf Green version exclusives here for simplicity's sake. I replayed Fire Red, so I missed out on Sandshrew, Vulpix, Bellsprout, Slowpoke, Starmie, Magmar, and Pinsir. So that's now 125. And realistically, most players would evolve their Pokemon and not repeat the same party member. So if we're looking at this as singular evolutionary lines, the total would now be 66. In Fire Red and Leaf Green, you have 66 realistic, fully evolved options. And honestly, I think that's great design. In the classic Pokemon titles, this limited Pokédex roster made the games tougher and made the Pokemon themselves more memorable. Sticking with Kanto, how many Pokemon are obtainable before you challenge Brock? Out of those 66 realistic options, the answer is surprisingly low. It's 8. You have your starter, Pidgey and Rattata on Route 1, Spearow and Mankey from Route 22, and in Viridian Forest, Caterpie, Weedle, and Pikachu. How many of those 8 are actually useful against Brock? Well, if you didn't go with Bulbasaur or Squirtle, your best option is Mankey, or Charmander getting lucky with Metal Claw. Of course, you could beat Brock with 6 Rattata if you're skillful enough, but in there lies the point. The more memorable challenges in Pokemon came from when the matchups weren't favorable. Jumping over to Gym 2 with Misty, if you didn't already get a Pikachu, or forgot about Paris and Mount Moon, your easiest path through the Water Gym is with the Grass Poison type placed right outside Cerulean, Oddish in Fire Red, or Bellsprout in Leaf Green. But by this point, you get a trickle of more non-direct options. Clefairy and Zubat are on the table for Mount Moon. Abra can be fun if you put in the time to train it up. And the same can be said for getting the 500 Pokédollar Magikarp and evolving it into Gyarados. Of course, it wasn't just Kanto that put strong limits on obtainable Pokemon. One of the most memorable for me is with Watson in the Hoenn games. Electric is a wild type for the 3rd gym because there aren't many ground types to easily counter him. Your choices here are slim. You have Marshtomp only if you pick the water starter, Geodude from Granite Cave, and Nincada, which doesn't get a ground attack until level 31. Though in all fairness, Shedinja could be used really well here as long as you can get around confusion. But again, you need to be crafty to get around this gym. The plethora of grass types Hoenn offers becomes useful since grass resists electric moves. And the slower strategies involving poison and paralysis can be useful. Or fighting types like Combuskin, Makuhita, and Breloom can help beat Magnemite and Magneton. This gym rewards thinking outside of the box. Or it's like how people make the joke that everyone has the same Sinnoh team. The Sinnoh Pokédex is super limited, with certain types having very little diversity in the Pokédex. And with the way gyms are structured, yeah, Staraptor and Luxray are fantastic additions to your starter. They're available super early on and hold their weight as the journey progresses. And I think the greatest limited Pokédex comes from Black and White, where before the first gym, you have your starter, Patrat, Lillipup, Purloin, and a gifted monkey. That's only 5 options. That doesn't even make a full team, and yet it's still memorable. You remember the monkey. Don't act like you don't. You used it to beat the Striaton gym. Don't act like you didn't use it and then box it immediately afterward. But I think the limitations started to change when Pokemon went 3D, and I think it became a much larger change for the franchise than people think. X and Y's Pokédex roster was 457. Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon was 403. The largest Pokédex before this point was Black 2 and White 2's Unova Pokédex, with 300. That's a big jump. On top of that, the limitations on how many Pokemon were obtainable before each major boss battle grew significantly. Let's use Sword and Shield as an example here. The first portion of the game between Postwick and the Professor's Lab isn't crazy. Starter, Blipbug, Caterpie, Hoot, Grubbin, Rookity, Wooloo, Nickit, Swabit, Purloin, Chewtle, Yamper, Zigzagoon, Seedot and Sword, Lotad and Shield, Magikarp, and Arrokuda. The total for realistic options there is 16. A little inflated compared to previous examples, but it allows for some really strong team customization very early on. But this is Sword and Shield, where den encounters are a thing, and the wild area exists. So here's everything else available before the first gym. Bunnelby, Minccino, Bouncebeat, Oddish, Budew, Wingull, Joltik, Electrike, Vanillite, Swinub, Delibird, Snorunt, Baltoy, Mudbray, Dwebble, Golett, Munna, Natu, Stuffle, Snover, Krabby, Wooper, Corphish, Nincada, Tyrogue, Pancham, Clink, Combee, Bronzor, Ralts, Drifloon, Gossiflor, Cherubi, Stunky, Timple, Duskull, Machop, Ghastly, Goldeen, Remoraid, Shelter, Basculin, Wishy-Washy, Pukumuku, Trubbish, Vulpix, Growlithe, Sizzlipede, Roly-Poly, Diglett, Drillbur, Roggenrola, Timber, Woobat, Noibat, Onyx, Meowth, Milcery, Cutiefly, Ferroseed, Pumpkaboo, Pikachu, Eevee, Swirlix, Slurpuff, Farfetch, Croagunk, Scraggy, Applin, Esper, Jupiter, Wobbuffet, Chinchou, Barpoach, Wimpod, Binacle, oh my gosh, Impidimp, Hatena, Salandit, Ponyard, Coughing, Bonds, Lyclefa, Togepi, Munchlax, Cottony, LGM, Cubchoo, Skorupi, Litwick, Inkay, Sneasel, Riolu, Gothita, Solosis, Shelmet, Carablast, Rufflet, Vullaby, Frillish, Toxel, Silicobra, Hippopotas, Helioptile, Trapinch, Axio, Marini, Darumaka, Ponyta, Yamask, Honedge, Sinistea, Phantom, Morlul, Snom, Clobopus, Bergmite, Mime Jr., Goomy, Jangmo-o, Ditto, and Charmander. I need some water. Oh my god. That list is insane. This also does not take into consideration the 2 additional DLC areas this game received. And I am not listing those out, I think you get the points. This is what I really think is an unidentified core issue for many when it comes to enjoying Pokemon. This easier access to a larger regional Pokédex doesn't invite the player to needlessly challenge themselves more. What I mean here is, if I can get every weakness to the first gym without breaking a sweat, why wouldn't I? It's ridiculously easy now. It's not even a hassle to find one super effective type. And because our options are so vast, the overlap of core team members you can beat the main story with that other players opted to use is noticeably smaller. We can't Sinnoh Paldea because the Paldea Pokédex invites us to encounter and try out so many Pokemon to an overwhelming level. But one thing is clear, the element of difficulty that a limited Pokédex once offered no longer exists. And it's also clear that the other streamlined parts of modern Pokemon games don't make this obvious. Permanent EXP share, easy to change movesets, instant PC access, heck, even getting experience just catching wild Pokemon. These, in many ways, have all undoubtedly made the games easier. Looking at remakes proves that. BDSP is a cakewalk compared to the original Diamond and Pearl. Both share the same Pokédex roster for the most part, but the quality of life changes in the remakes that helps reduce the game's difficulty, makes the challenge a limited Pokédex provided redundant. And at the end of the day, it's the Pokédex of it all. Are you trying to catch them all? Are you rotating party members in and out? Is this style of Pokemon fun for you at all? Is leaning in on the collection aspect more appealing? Because that's what's being highlighted much more nowadays than it was in the past. The grind to complete a Pokédex in the games up through Gen 5 was super tedious. I personally did not tend to catch Pokemon that wouldn't end up as team members or HM users. The incentives to do so were minimal, especially with how many games were needed to complete the National Pokédex. Compared to this open world, massive regional dex model of Pokemon, the mechanical design and gameplay loops are structured differently. You can remove the streamlined features from modern titles, and maybe that would make them more challenging, but I don't think that would change things all that much. The limits on exploration, the style of story progression, and rewarding the player for going off the beaten path, that has all changed significantly too. It's a core difference between older and newer games, I can't deny that. But would Sword and Shield or Scarlet and Violet be more fun if there were more required trainer battles than wild Pokemon encounters? Or EXP was simply harder to earn? In my opinion, no. I don't think so. If anything, it probably just slows down how long it takes to get through the game. But I feel that a question like this is more eye-opening. Are there too many Pokemon nowadays for a limited Pokédex roster to work? And that answer is no. Beyond remakes, both Legends Arceus and Legends ZA demonstrate this. The Pokédex sizes in these games are 242, and before DLC, 232 respectively. Compare those limited Pokédexes to the world you explore. One, an untouched wilderness of an ancient region, the other, a modern metropolis in the present day. While both have wildly different settings and progression, I find their Pokédexes to still be memorable. With Legends Arceus, you have every single Pokemon from Sinnoh, including the evolutions not found in Diamond and Pearl's Pokédex. On top of that, Hisuian forms and new evolutions that tie into mobility and story boss fights make the new additions really stand out. In Legends ZA, you have every Pokemon from Kalos back, and every Mega evolution, new and old. It's especially hard for the Megas to not be memorable. I'm glad the Legends games are able to lean in on this more. I think that's why people tend to be fonder of them. The Pokédex size and untraditional game design are working hand in hand. But the new generational titles, they don't operate like this. They really lean into the Pokédex being enormous. I've been critiquing it this whole time, but I don't necessarily think that these expanded Pokédex rosters are a bad thing. What they allow for is a different experience. They allow for a wider range of Pokemon that can be used on your team. It spices up the order in which you can obtain Pokemon and go about completing the Pokédex. It empowers the player to level up quickly and get over-leveled, or if you want to, fight the ease and put a handicap on yourself. Overall, it gives you more options. You might not be inclined to take those options, and I don't blame you. Once upon a time, options were limited. But the experiences these games offer now, they want you to lean in on those massive Pokédexes and wide open options. And I enjoy that they're different. I stand by that the contents of a regional Pokédex don't matter nearly as much as they used to, but even though the Pokédex is now an iPhone app, a lot of it is still the same. You still get oddly written fun facts, hints towards where wild Pokemon are, types, size, cry, weight, height. It's still all there. Sure, it's not as useful as just Googling where a certain Pokemon is, but the developers know you do that. You don't program the evolution methods for Galarian Yamask or White Stripe Basculin without knowing people are going to help each other out online. Yet again, aren't these absurd evolution methods asking the player to think outside the box more? Seek out possibilities that are completely crazy. Besides, if the games were still super limited like they were in the 2000s, would we actually care? To an extent, it would be more of the same with even fewer changes. It's not guaranteed. What do I know though? These are all just thoughts. I'm allowed to go on hypothetical tangents. That's allowed, right? Right? Both old school limited Pokédexes and 400 plus mega ones have their place. And yeah, I personally enjoy both. I have more nostalgia for the limited ones, because a traditional mainline experience like Johto or Hoenn probably isn't returning outside of a remake. But I also embrace the possibilities large Pokédexes offer, and their rosters really make me appreciate the Pokemon that I can use, whether they are brand new or easier to obtain when they were first introduced. More games like the latter are likely coming. Winds and waves will probably follow this large Pokédex style, and I'm excited for it because this future Pokédex roster size will make or break the game for many. That's just part of the design, and no matter which way that Pokédex goes, I'm excited for it. The Pokédex itself might not matter as much as it did in the past, but the amount of Pokemon it contains are pivotal to the experience the game provides, and to some limited degree, how much you enjoy the game. This might be a small detail compared to region design or graphics or story handholding, but I think it holds substantial value. Best I can do is give my opinion on the matter. I'd love to hear everyone's thoughts on this in the comments. Is this something that matters? Is it large enough to be a justifiable issue? Am I allowed to make a Pokédex video without mentioning Dexit?